ain't going back. Not gonna buy into all that. Hey, ain't gonna hide. Gonna let all the fears slide. Got Mother Nature on my side. Got all of the loving.
Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to the New Now. I am here with Harald Kautz. We have decided to continue our conversation on Archons. We've touched base on them over our last few conversations, a little bit here and there. But Archon Zoo, Harald, maybe you can give us a bit of background as to what you've discovered, over your years of research and personal experiences, and we can take it from there.
Yes, sure. With the Archons, it's kind of a long story. When I had my first encounters, it was like a war situation. And they posed a serious threat with capabilities of poisoning the body and messing with your thoughts and manipulating. And it was a real clash in duality with them.
What do you mean by war situation?
It was kind of the time when I began to be aware of things happening in the astral realm, being aware of mass rituals by the black magic community. Let's say they invent a new bird flu and then they can kill 10 million chickens and goose in one day, and then you have all that burst of life force that can be redirected to ignite World War III. And we were kind of aware of what was happening in that realm by reading the newspapers and having perceptions in the emotional fields and the collective emotional fields. And of course, nobody needs World War III, so you jump in and counteract those mass rituals. And then if you do that, of course, structures on the astral realm coming from the dark end became aware of us counteracting things. And of course, then they loved to attack. This is kind of, the early things happening. Then later it was kind of funny. It was more like morphing into a struggle to clean myself free of them being in me. First encounter is like the enemy outside, and second encounter the enemy within. Starting with what we all know as the Kundalini snake and her male partner, the Tumu snake, which before actually I loved and enjoyed as part of the Kundalini yoga practice and of Tantra sex and of all sorts of stupid games, to then realize that this actually is coming from the same layer of satanic entities. And this was kind of the first step to take to free myself from that influence of entities that I had been actually being identified with in a way. And that was kind of the first one. The second one was realizing that with the practice of circumcision, you invite a spider demon into your second chakra as a result of the traumatization done by the ritual. It's called Brit Milah. It's a contract you make. So this is one that comes in with a contract. And I think I did interviews on that topic alone. If you look for it on YouTube, my name plus circumcision, you will find the full story. Cut it short, I had to get it out,
so to speak.
And that was kind of the second period in my life when I mostly encountered those spider demons. One day I realized that I had lost myself in codependencies, and dissolving them brought me to encounter the Cthulhu, the Kraken demon, that basically is administering all hierarchical structures on this planet as a shared entity between narcissist and people pleaser, or boss and employee, or I'm not that firm in the military command layers. It's between the officer and the simple soldier, or whatever, the general and whoever is below in that area. It's all like whenever you have a hierarchy and a command and control structure, you will find those entities being spread in between the layers of the command structure, the control structure. And those were kind of the last ones I had the honor to get out of myself. So if they appear to me today, mostly it's within healing sessions with clients that still have those problems.
How did you get them out of yourself?
At the beginning, it was quite a violent thing of pulling them, kind of in the shaman tradition of doing exorcism. In the middle of things, it was more like being kind of friendly with them, asking them what they want. You know, you corner them, you don't give them a chance to escape. And then you can ask them, what do you want? Do you want to be reconnected to the divine, or do you want to be dissolved? And then they had a choice. And the choices turned more and more into the direction of being reconnected. Then you pull down an elevator of growth, like a light beam from above, put them in, and send them to the divine to be not speed dated, but speed healed. Which is a service by the divine, basically, to dissolve all the negative karma within minutes. Very painful for them, but a good choice to be taken. By now, I haven't seen any of them choosing to be dissolved anymore. So something has changed in the collective fields, so that it's a clear choice that those beings, they will apparently have their own version of Gaia in their own timeline, and they all get prepared for a fully valid incarnation. And so they get their emotional bodies back for that one.
Interesting.
Yeah, especially if you look at how it is accomplished, how it is done. This is a weird thing, because it used to be kind of part of the enemy agenda at the beginning. Now it's something I can just welcome, not out of my perspective, but being in compassion with them. It's a beautiful thing, you know, to be allowed to reincarnate again. Sadly, kind of, they will do it in our children, which is not that easy to accept.
What do you mean? Like I understand what you mean by reincarnate in a different body or having children, but maybe you can expand on that notion.
If I look at the unfolding and what options are given, kind of, if you take the jabs, your immortal soul is expelled, then your emotional body is expelled, and the human body is completely emptied. And if you look at what happens then, it's like something robotic takes over. This is, in my perspective, an Archon incarnating into an emptied human body. If you look at all the pictures of people dropping dead, it looks like an unsuccessful attempt to take over the body, which is then just stopping to breathe and live. So it seems like that the normal human is not that easy to be taken by an Archon. But if you look at the genetic changes made in children that were perceived in a moment of, or in the under the condition of both parents being tripled, and if you look at the children coming out of that, seems to be a new species. And if you look into those eyes, it more looks like an Archon being in there than a human soul.
So that's the positive of them being reincarnated through Gaia with an emotional body. That's the connection here.
Yeah. I think it's a good idea to not prolong any hostilities with them when they incarnate, because I would rather expect them to be kind of okay, highly intelligent and up to full-scale healing of their species. Why not, You can make peace with a former enemy.
Sure. That would make sense, even if not a little scary for the parents, I guess, at first.
If you know what's happening, it might be scary if you just look at the child as a child.
Right.
It's just different. I mean, parents report that it's different. They say these kids hold their head upright from day one, have a completely different eye contact, seem to have an undeveloped emotional body, but very quick development of motoric abilities, like being capable of walking with 3 months, talking extremely early. So it's different, but it doesn't mean that it's bad. I mean,
is this kind of tie into what you had mentioned in one of our previous talks about all the timelines rolling into one?
Oh, they're split again.
Oh my goodness.
Things develop. It was quite kind of a quick one. There was some form of decision that could be observed in mid-January, end of January and February. And then it was unclear how long it will take till the separation happens again. And then we had these funny predictions on a cosmic event on the 22nd of February that obviously did not take place in my timeline. But perception from the astral, not on my end, but on other people's ends, perceived that it actually did happen in a different timeline. So it looks like with this event, not event, things have split again. So, I mean, good opportunity to ask you, did you have a cosmic event?
Very interesting that February 22nd is around the time of the Chinese New Year, 21st, 22nd, year of the rabbit having started. So that's interesting.
Yeah, so you didn't have like sunstorms that destroyed all the satellites and switched off all computers. Apparently not, because we are talking over a computer. Yeah, so we seem to have ended up on the same timeline.
You and I, you mean?
Yes, looks like.
Looks like. I've seen things switch before my very, I talked to people weeks ago, as a quick explanation of a fellow I wanted to chat with. And he sent me his WhatsApp phone number, communication on the cell phone. And I told him I don't have WhatsApp because, I'm in Asia and they don't have it. Then I figured out how to get it on my computer. And then I wrote him and I said, I deleted your email with your WhatsApp number. Now I'm ready to chat. I can do it. I figured it out. Perhaps you can send me your WhatsApp. And he went, what's WhatsApp?
Oop.
I know. I said, you sent me your WhatsApp number to communicate. This was like maybe a month ago or something like that. And I just re-chatted with him a few days ago, and he said, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't even know what WhatsApp is. And I went, okay. So it seemed to me, since you
Okay.
mentioned,
Yeah.
timelines shifting, I watched my reality in that very moment. Even books I'm reading now, I've seen covers change. I have a series I read 10, 12, 15 years ago, and I remember the old cover picture, and then I picked it up recently, and the cover picture was different. I'm going, oh, isn't that interesting?
Yeah, maybe we all think too linear
Yes.
to grasp the core of what's happening.
Do you think it has something to do with these other children being born, like between like humans that are being born? Let's say, like if you had a regular child that wasn't, Archon reincarnation, and then how are these children interacting, and would that be part of what you mean by a separate timeline?
No, I tend to forget that if you create a new timeline, it creates its own new past. So this is what you might be experiencing. It's like, whenever you have a creational act and kind of a cosmic cell division, the creation of a new timeline is kind of a creative act. Then from there on, the things that have been brought into reality need to create their own past that then looks like a logical pre-story to what's happening. And maybe it's a longer process that is taking place. It takes a little bit of time to fully divide. I don't know.
Not surprised.
It's whenever you start to accept that you have structures running forward in time and structures running backwards in time, which physics shows, just basic Maxwell equations show that. It's completely ridiculous to accept the Big Bang to be at the beginning of time. Because creation happens and then it spreads into both directions, plus time, minus time. This is kind of what's happening in a physical realm. So we should not be surprised if the past is continuously changing.
Right. I read an interesting quote recently, how time is actually going opposite back to a singularity moment. And, that's what some of the wiser people have seen. Yeah.
Going like that, both directions. And both future is unpredictable and past changeable.
Nice. It's nice to be in a flexible reality. Gives you the opportunity to become how you need to become, I'm finding.
Yeah.
So as you're working with the Archons, and you got into this, I mean, it's interesting that you expelling your personal Archons in the work that you've done, that we've chatted about in some of our previous interviews, have led you to these conclusions, or I guess realizations, which is a better way of putting it. I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but what do you feel about that?
No, they're just part of the game. They do not change the physics, but of course they are part of the story. And when we learn about the story, we cannot fully grab it without understanding what they are. I mean, we have been through those topics that understanding the Archons means seeing that they are part of the Satanic biosphere. Satan being originally I thought an alien planet that has self-destroyed. The newer realization is that he is Gaia traveling back in time from a future where Gaia has self-destroyed. Very likely because he perceived himself as her son, which doesn't make sense if he's coming from somewhere else, kind of from a completely different solar system, unrelated to Gaia. He wouldn't relate to her as his mother. Like taking cell division as the form. Planets multiply, like cell division in the sense of a splitting timeline.
Right.
And then one of those timelines creating a planetary narrative that ends with self-destruction would be the way he came here, kind of from the future.
Right.
This is kind of the narrative that came, that he was so desperate at the end of the day, so desperate about all the pain in his timeline, that he decided to travel back in time to destroy his own origin, to get himself erased from the creation, because he found himself too painful to be. This is kind of the narrative we found. And he partly succeeded, not by destroying us, but by healing his timeline and just asking the divine to remove him in that closed loop of getting there and traveling back, to be isolated and completely removed. That was the third density that split off last year in March.
Right.
And stepped into nuclear World War III scenarios.
Okay.
We haven't seen any of that. It's a different timeline. But that was kind of the one that evolved into the big white gray that then came back with their planetary consciousness and that satanic mindset that had made up his mind to self-destruct.
And how would you incorporate, let's say, the current bird flu shenanigans, with blood sacrifice and that successful destruction or not of Satan? Are they tied in at all? Because I've heard of recent bird flu things going on here, and even in Japan, of that nature, or blood sacrifice, which is an interesting way to see it.
It's weird because, like, you read articles that Satanism is the number one religion in the US today, and everyone is going into that. Hollywood is going into that. You still see the rituals, you still see all the things. And I also wondered kind of, how can they do it? Don't they have perception for the other side? If you would look at it as just people sticking to their rituals that they have been doing for millennia, it would be an easy way to explain. But I cannot imagine that they do not perceive the other side. And they should realize that that realm is not what it used to be. But in a way they don't. And this is something I only start to understand how it works. What we know about the astral is that it's not that highly defined in now and here. If you travel astrally, you can go everywhere, and you can go into any given time. You can astrally travel back into the past. And what we saw when you deal with entities on the astral plane, and even if you experience the moment of healing of an entity, you will always be capable of traveling back to a place where you meet the unhealed form. I experienced that first with the fallen angels. Like many people know that form of Metatron, where he's that fiery bull the horns, and his entire body is more or less flames, but more black smoke than flames. This is kind of his fallen angel form. And then you might meet another Metatron that is in bright white light, looking like a completely divine angelic being. And you say, how can this be? You know, is he this or is he that? On the astral, you don't need to find a final answer on the question, because you can meet his former form and you can meet his actual form. And we found the same structure with other fallen angels. It was like after the observed healing process with Satan himself and the Archons, if you want to meet them in that form, being quite lovable and supportive to humans, there was kind of one level of the astral realm that really was depressing and felt like giving us a bad mood. And it turned out that there were kind of these sandwich structures of fallen angels and their shadows, known as the dark overlords, holding up, well, how could you call it, tangent fields where humans were caught in.
Tangent
fields, like the first one that appeared actually was, or one of the early ones, working with people that have a eating disorder, like anorexia or being bulimic. And it was not that easy to find a healing path for them that really worked, because they seemed to be somehow completely overpowered, controlled by something much stronger than them. So the usual self-healing technique simply wouldn't work. So one day we started to access the problem with some form of family constellation setup.
Family constellation.
Family constellation.
Oh, family, like, right.
Family, like when you work with your ancestors and put representatives into the room. And we started to experiment with sandwich constellations, where you have the human with the eating disorder, and then there is kind of an angelic being that addresses him from the divine positive side, and that demonic entity that is addressing him from the self-destructive side. And we gave the client the possibility to experience himself in that externalized form of the inner dialogue. And it was quite impressive, because that angelic thing, it's kind of like waiting outside, and when you almost starved yourself to death and your physicality is starting to break down and your spirit is identifying in the outer layers of your aura, and everything is so high energetic and dissociated, and then you have that contact with the angelic being. It feels very empowering, enlightening, and the angelic being is welcoming you into his realm while you starve, you know? And then you have that little devil on the other side that goes like, maybe half a toast. Don't take the whole slice. Half a toast is enough. No. Make it quarter. You know, this is kind of the inner dialogue. And when you dissolve that in this technique of doing family constellation with representing volunteers that take those voices in, you expel that inner dialogue from the client. He can see the field clearer, and he can say, no, this is a fucking game. I don't feel like playing it anymore. Because it's not, you know, you gain a degree of freedom. And then it's kind of easy to pull the client, or to allow the client to pull himself out of that sandwich structure. And whenever we addressed basically a new game in that form, we had a massive clash of that angelic being with that dark overlord. And they started to go into direct communication of like, where's our human gone to? Can we get a new victim, please, to play with? And we didn't supply them with any new victims, so they had to start to deal with each other. And it turned out it's actually an fallen angel playing with his own shadow. And at the end of the day, you can make them recombine to a non-fallen angel just by allowing them to integrate, or allowing the angelic being to integrate his own shadow, by acknowledging that the game actually is boring, by acknowledging that Lucifer has taken the step back and he's back home, and doesn't make much sense to stay after he has returned. And this is kind of always a very interesting process when you address a new topic, a new game for the first time. Then you have those long, thrilling processes with the angelic fallen angel and the dark overlord. And when it's done once, then basically the client can pull in the former forms of the unhealed version of them to solve his own issue. But you will never for a second time find an interesting dialogue on the happening on the collective plane, because there actually everything is solved already. So this is kind of what kept happening in the last 3-4 months. We encountered those couples of fallen angels and their shadows, and could observe them in the now, kind of in the potential that is coming up, allowing them to heal and to return to source. So at the moment, I would say everything is solved
for the patient,
for our collective. This is why the splitting is happening now, because kind of the splitting of the timeline can happen, because there is a version of our reality where we do not have any duality left in it. So all, it's I even start to think it was quite an amazing game, like if I look from outside into that history of us having angels that say, heaven is boring, so let's create a place that is kind of a bit more thrilling. And then they basically disassemble themselves into two parts to form those poles, to pull humanity into a thrilling game where you can experience really heavy stuff, which is simply not as boring as being in heaven. Yeah, and when you're kind of in, I think it's easy to agree that we went too far in certain things. A little bit of thrill kind of could be okay, but if you really think it to the end of it, you cannot go to or you cannot maintain the system in a good working mode. If you want to experience separation, you will experience what separation means at the end of the day, and this is a cruelty that is far beyond beautiful,
way to put
or
it.
thrilling, or exciting. It's just sad only.
How would you tie that in with your version, or what you feel is karma then? Like, I mean, I've heard all kinds of people giving all kinds of ideas. I have my own feelings, but
karma is a bitch.
Yeah.
Karma is just a mechanism that is given, automatically given, to make sure that when a higher self, kind of the full version of our souls, is incarnating limited aspects of itself into lives that have a limited perspective given by birth, that at the end of the day, the story you decided to explore will be seen from all perspectives. So if your higher self throws you into a victim incarnation and you're completely victimized, this is one aspect you can observe. But it's not the entire story. Then you're thrown into a life where you have no chance to not become a perpetrator. You know, being born in the right family, in the right bloodline, being traumatized during childhood, being initiated into dark things, you automatically take that choice until you have experienced it, and then you have a different perspective of the same game. And then you get born into a family and you're allowed to become the savior. Then you have another perspective, kind of, that is not less destructive and sad, but it's also one perspective within the drama triangle. So karma makes sure that you take all positions in the drama triangle to get it balanced as an experience, to be able to ascend out of it.
Right.
So this is karma, kind of making sure that you get all perspectives.
Do you see that happening at the same time, like multiple incarnations, so-called in the now or your now? Like from the higher being and multiple incarnations, like let's say you and I are from the same higher being, as an example. I've heard that story before.
Time is a difficult concept. I mean, there is a continuous time observed from the perspective of the collective fields. You know, the material plane seems to have some form of continuity that is safeguarded by the higher aspects, like the planetary consciousness. I do see Gaia in a continuous geological development since billions of years, I guess. But that is kind of my perspective. I don't know with her reality if this is true. No? Then you have the creational events that open the space for an adventure to happen, which are coming from outside of that timeline. And they set the stage for one civilization to experience itself, one creation to happen. We failed 5 times to deal with the satanic problem. And now, or 4 times now, we are in the 5th creation, and we finally did it. And this has been placed on the timeline of the planet in different points, creating kind of beautiful or less beautiful storyboards to experience things. If I look at my personal memories, I have single lifetimes that I can access by memory. And I can place those memories in an order within the collective timeline. But as memories, they just stand next to each other. You know, it's different than what I have in this lifetime, that I have a better memory of yesterday than I have about a week ago or a month ago or a year ago. And then the childhood is getting completely blurry. It's not that way in looking at the different lifetimes standing next to each other. But I also cannot say that they all happened at the same time, because from where I look, the concept of time is not valid at all. So for me, it's all about balancing experience. And I really can't tell you if the reason why I do not remember future lifetimes is because there is an order to it, or because we are at the end of the cycle. And there are no future lifetimes in that cycle, because the cycle is ending. One of the two. Can't say. Could be both. I don't understand enough of physics to tell the difference or make a decision here.
Do you ever see the perpetrator meeting the victim in the same life? Or have you had that experience in some of the healing workshops you've done?
You mean that someone is crossing both perspectives in one lifetime?
Yes.
Like not as a main aspect of the life, but of course, if you want to live a perpetrator life, you need to be victimized as a child, because you need traumatization to lose yourself to a degree that you will be capable of doing those things. So you will always basically have a footprint of the other perspective preparing the switching in the drama triangle.
Makes sense.
Yeah, some people are born as perpetrators and then they lose a war and get victimized. Of course, you have the switching from the positions, but you always have some form of main perspective. And other perspectives are rather blocked.
How would you, let's say, equate the chakras with the archons with the timelines and what's going on, if they even are connected? Like personal energy centers in the body.
Equate the what?
The personal chakra system.
Okay, with the archons.
With the
okay,
archons.
If you think about who is controlling what chakra, number 1 and number 7 is the snake. Number 2 and number 6 is the spider. Number 3 and number 5 is Cthulhu, the kraken demon, octopus. And the heart remains free normally. The only one that is capable of even touching the heart chakra is the kraken, Cthulhu. They can play with it, tease it, enter it to a degree, but never really possess it.
So that's the 4th area is the heart then.
Heart is in the middle, the center of it, number 4.
And how would you, if at all, touch that to timelines and the splitting of at the moment? Is that something that would affect a person's decision to go in one timeline or the next in a life?
You mean whether there are archons in or not?
Yes.
Apparently not, because I hardly know people that have completely freed themselves from archons. I would say, if I just open my eyes, like 70% of German population has Cthulhu's, kraken demons, 50% spiders, and close to 100% snakes. And they're still on my timeline. So apparently, it's not criterion or going somewhere.
How does this, if at all, tie in with Satan healing himself? Is there a connection?
It was like an family constellation set up that morphed into something developing on the collective plane, where we could observe basically Satan go into healing. And when he wanted to depart, there was an emerging problem, which was if he takes his creatures with him, kind of pulls all the Archons out, humanity will be lost. Because there will be nothing left to remind them of their unconsciousness. It needs the trigger of the Archon to bring to the awareness of the human that he has lost a part of himself. If that ugly pressure wouldn't be there, they would just continue with the flow and keep existing as crippled spirits with no chance of healing. So it was kind of not allowed by the divine for the Archons to move out. And they said, okay, if this is what it is, simply out of love, we will stay and keep teasing you. And this is kind of how it feels like when things on the human side come into healing and they are not needed anymore to tease. They're happy to leave.
I see.
And I haven't seen one of them being in resistance. It's like, let's bring our job to a good end here and then piss off. It's quite a difference to what we used to have.
Yes.
When they still were following their collective agenda to destroy humanity. That was a completely different ball game.
So how do you, let's say, see that as the splitting timelines at the moment? Like, how does that tie into that, if at all?
If at all, not necessarily ties in. I mean, I think what makes the difference at the moment with the splitting timeline is the difference in quality between humans evolving into unity consciousness and people still fully identified within the drama triangle. This is where I could imagine the split is happening. And it's amazing how fast unity consciousness is developing in many people.
Are you meeting more people developing unity consciousness?
Yes. I mean, my choice of people I meet, all of them. And if I see drama interaction somewhere, it's like, who are you? What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be in my timeline, you know.
I would agree. It seems how we play with our free will is just the way you mentioned.
And it's kind of what I feel sometimes, or where sometimes I think that I might be doing mistakes when, I mean, I see that those people are around. Like, they're still running politics. We still have war in Ukraine. They still try to bomb nuclear facilities, get nuclear Armageddon out. And it's still tempting to put attention into that direction. This is kind of what still ties me in to that realm, just being curious to observe what happens through the people who play within the drama triangle in my realm. So there seems to be some form of connection, but not in my daily life. I mean, we need to see the difference between doing some online research or reading a newspaper or watching evening news on telly. Like they said in the Bible, war or rumors of war.
I mean, I know
So
on a personal level, I've never seen anything face to face or eye to eye. I've just heard rumors of all of this.
yeah. Maybe this is how it works, that we get rumors of it and the other ones get the real thing. But we're not on one plane.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the language of the Bible is quite precise. There will be war and rumors of war. Maybe this is how you describe from a different perspective how it looks like when timelines split.
Makes sense. The line of giving everything to Caesar that is Caesar's back to Caesar, you know, the actual war, moving with the rumors.
And clear commands of do not get involved into what's happening there. I mean, it's tempting to start doing spiritual work to get the war in Ukraine to an end. No, not allowed. None of our business.
I feel the same.
It's weird. Normally, things were different. It was always welcomed if you put your spirit in to quiet down ugly things, but not in this case.
Maybe that's how you split your realities. You know, if you put your foot in one, you can't be in the other at the moment. It's possible. That's what I'm finding.
Yeah. Feels like.
So what do good people do with this reality and what's going on? And by good people, I mean, let's say moral people.
Oh, moral, that was one of the fallen angels.
Really?
He was actually the cutest one. He was such a hopeless case, kind of the moralistic angel with the little devil that wanted you to not obey the laws. Kind of, serving the hierarchy concept. Because it's a man-made law where moral and ethics kick in. It's not the divine one. With the divine one, you're completely free. You just have to face your karma. All good, you know. Do whatever you want, face your karma. Free choice. And with moral and ethic, it's kind of regulation. And if you disobey, you get punished. No, this is not divine. This is not a divine concept. And it was actually the most difficult one to get into reintegration and healing. You know whom we also found that was a good one? Christ. Christ, and as a fallen angel and his dark overlord, kind of his shadow, turned out to be Yahweh.
Really?
Yeah. That was an absolutely exciting session.
Interesting.
Yeah. I didn't expect that one, but it was kind of obvious. It started with this kind of package of unfelt suffering that he, according to the church, took on him to give humanity a karma-free new start opportunity. And that was kind of a burden in the room. And then we started to kind of build a family constellation set up around that burden. So Christ appeared, and Paulus appeared.
Paulus. Who's Paulus?
One of the disciples.
Paul.
Actually, Paul.
Paulus, okay.
Yeah, that is the founder of the Catholic Church in a way. And he was backed by a demon. He didn't perceive that thing as a demon. He perceived it as the only valid source of truth. But the way the demon was speaking was so obviously demonic that Paul really got irritated, kind of couldn't believe that he once upon a time fell for that thing, because it really was creepy. It was like, you human, you think you know what hell is. And that was kind of the demon. And you can imagine that Paul was not really proud of himself being subordinated to such a thing. And then we asked the thing for his name. He looked like Jabba the Hutt. And that fat frog-like thing. So we asked him to reveal his name 3 times, and he refused. Even after the 3rd time, he was just laughing his head off. And then it was clear he's the one that has no name, And we told him in his funny face, and he kind of was a bit unhappy that we caught him. And then it was like the feeling that this burden that actually Christ absorbed is actually his karma, the punishing God, bringing all this suffering into the world.
Christ and his own karma, you mean, or the nameless one's karma?
No, Yahweh. Yahweh's the suffering, all the unfelt suffering that Christ took upon himself, volunteering. The idea was give it back to Yahweh because he caused it, He's the evil one. He caused it. He should eat that karma. And he didn't like to. So we had a heavy negotiation. I told him, when humanity is ascending, you will lose contact with us. And then I can tell you, you will know after 1,000 years in your bloody hell, you will know what boredom is. And then he started to panic and thought being the one to be left behind is maybe not a good idea. And he accepted to take in his karma. So Christ came, and in a hug, he basically passed that burden on to Yahweh. And the moment they hugged, something weird happened. The man presenting Yahweh, he said, oops, I don't exist. I don't exist anymore. So whatever he was, it was reabsorbed by Christ in that hugging gesture. And Christ was a different one afterwards. And this is kind of one of the setups where it became clear how this realm works. That you basically have a fallen angel producing a shadow of himself, the unacknowledged, Christ, the shiny one, the all beautiful one, the all loving, that will never kill a fly and always be forgiving. And, this is not holistic. Yeah, at least there is some potential. Doesn't need that you need to act according to that potential, but not acknowledging a dark part of yourself means expelling it, which creates a shadow. It's like with every other being. So it's not a surprise that Christ is coming with a shadow. I was surprised who that shadow at the end of the day was, because that shadow was active years before Christ appeared in kind of our tradition. So the old God, the punishing God. And the two of them, they really played a marvelous game with the humans. What an exciting storyboard. And this is kind of where you can grab that idea of let's create a more exciting world. Not all this hugging and listening to harp music and being cozy with everyone. This is boring paradise. So let's create something more exciting. So you need a thrill, and to create thrill, you need polarities. And this is how they created all those polarities. Gambling addiction was another one. Kind of carrying the entire monetary system, pushing humanity into scarcity with everything that followed.
Mm.
Run by an angel, fallen, and a shadow.
Interesting.
Kind of very, very, very brilliant and highly structured things to discover.
Lucky. It seems lucky us to have come to a place where we can see these stories played out in such a way, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, look back, grasp what it means, and then look back and remember the times when our spirits were fully absorbed by those conflicts.
Mm.
Structurally, like I'm Christian, I'm Jewish, you're following the wrong God. No, you following the wrong God. Oh, I'm running out of money. Scarcity. It's like, from all ends, it's tearing us apart and giving us that intensity of being subject to that gambling level of angels with their own shadows. This is a creation, not the divine one. It's just took a couple of guys who said we can do that better, less boring.
Interesting.
Don't know whether I should say thank you or kick their balls. I don't know.
Maybe both.
Maybe both. Yeah.
It depends on the moment in the day. Well, you've certainly helped me integrate a few things in this chat, having come from maybe a similar religious background, you and I, from our childhood to where we are today, having this conversation is a hugely interesting unknown path that I couldn't have even considered when I was a little boy. But always wanted to experience something beyond what was told to me as a dead end of potential to this open-ended, imaginative life we seem to be discussing here.
An interesting thing is the new Gaia is tangible.
How so?
She's I haven't had contact yet myself, but I know people that already got in contact with that new quality of Gaia in the ascending timeline. And she's a really beautiful and loving and all innocent planetary spirit. So, and the realm she's about to create is supposed to be in the quality of Avalon. Beautiful. From what I heard, I haven't been there yet. But
so interesting about what you just mentioned, beautiful Gaia. Do you mean like meeting a personage, which I have, or do you mean just beautiful experiences in nature, which I have also had? Like you talk to a butterfly or a bird, or hear something you haven't heard before. So how would you describe that meeting?
I haven't had it. I can just relate to the meetings with Gaia I had. And this is in the sense of a persona because it's a voice contact. It's a dialogue. She talks. She talks with her own characteristic voice and characteristic content and ways to communicate. Like having a character. Maybe it's the best way to describe it. She is a character. If you have seen her once or heard her once, you will always recognize her. Just by 2-3 words, like you would recognize an eccentric neighbor whenever he pops up with his voice.
Kind of like this morning, I was walking at dawn, and it was the first time in my life I've heard a pigeon sounding melodious, which was very interesting. It's like I'm walking and I hear this echo in an empty street I don't usually walk on in the morning. I'm going, this is the first time a pigeon has sounded pleasant to my ears. Usually it's kind of annoying or the same cooing or what have you. And I go, that was interesting. I've never heard a pigeon call the dawn before, so to speak.
Interesting, because this is something I also observed, that the bird communication in the forest where I walk my dog has become more harmonic than before. More communicative and more harmonic. Maybe it's the quality of perception that is changing, that it's easier to read out, and it's always have been there, but our spirits transform and we start to be capable of reading the content again. I don't know which way it works, but I had the same observation actually.
I've heard crows laughing that didn't sound like crows in the dusk recently, over the last, that's, the hair standing up on the back of my neck. And now, the other side of things in the dawn over the last few weeks. It's been interesting.
Yeah. Also, listening to languages has changed. I kind of had an episode with the Aramaic version of the early Christian prayers. So I listened to a lot of Aramaic language in song or prayer. And it felt like I understand the language without understanding the words. Kind of a completely different mode of perception that is suddenly available. Maybe it's the same effect like with the birds.
I think so. I find people speaking Japanese to me fast. If I don't think about it, I understand what they're saying. And then I realized I didn't understand what they were saying.
But you did.
But I did.
Something in you did. Yeah, this is how it feels like. It's weird.
Yeah, but then I did. Happened to me yesterday too. It's been an interesting perspective in timelines recently of, I guess, delving into personal magic. Could be a good way to look at it. All right. Well, I thought we were going to delve into all kinds of nasty stuff about Archons, but it seems we've taken a road to a beautiful place instead, which is delighting me and always surprising me when I chat with you, Harald. Do you think we've come to a conclusion here in this particular conversation, or was there anything else you wish to add to time? I mean, it was a beautiful way you put it about Yahweh and Jesus being, shadows of each other and coming down and healing. That's just one of the most amazing ways I've seen religion. I think you've helped me to heal all my own past traumas of religion that have come and, fought with me since I was, 4 or 5, since my parents crying at one of the major religions that they couldn't afford to pay our way into. How you're supposed to, pray your way for forgiveness by giving them lots of money at the time, I remember, yeah.
This is when you're surrounded by fallen angels.
Yeah.
That play you as a team.
Yeah, for sure. But that started me on my path. I still remember sitting in the car and my own reality diverging from where I was going at that point to where you and I are today. And I can see, as you say, a convergence of sorts in even all the conversations we've had to this moment. So this is very cathartic, amazing, and fantastic, if I was going to use 3 adjectives.
Yeah, I hope I did not hurt religious feelings.
You can't help but do that with anybody that I found, but I understand what you mean.
If I did, I apologize, but I feel obliged to share my perceptions. And also, I hope it's not arrogant in the way, kind of saying Jesus comes to our seminars to receive healing. That could be regarded a bit funny.
No, I think it's a beautiful way.
It's like when those things happens, the beginning of it is that all the people participating in those gatherings are completely free of intention. So there's nothing staged, nothing projected in, nothing wished for. Or the human spirits step back, give their bodies, donate them kind of to the process. And then it develops and we are all just observers.
Do you mean
This is kind of
do you mean your gatherings of these
the
experiences?
gatherings where the things happened that I just shared.
Right.
But the healing of the fallen angels, there's no agenda from our end behind it. We're just observers, and I can just share what we observed. Whatever it means, I don't know. Kind of, it's partly it looks like it does have an impact on the outer world. And partly it seems like it's still a choice of every single human to what he wants to relate to. So maybe the only thing I can say is that there are healed forms of the collective realm available to be addressed and seen in the astral. Maybe this is kind of what's allowed to say. Doesn't mean that the other forms are not existing there anymore. So whoever is still playing the usual games will find his environment to do so. But I think it's a good opportunity to look for the new forms, the healed forms, and play other games with them, whatever this will be. It's possible now.
It's amazing to give people new dreams, realities, perspectives to step upon. Maybe they're not ready to fly yet, but you can grow your wings from one of these new perspectives you've shared. So I think it's a beautiful thing that's been offered today. I would say it's helped me.
Take it from there.
Yeah, and take it from there. Hey, Harald. If you were here, I'd give you a big hug. So I'll give you a big hug to where you are right now. I totally appreciate. Yeah, it's always a beautiful surprise chatting with you, which is why I love it so much.
Okay.
So
my best regards to all the listeners.
Mine as well. We'll leave it here. I'll pick it up again with Harald as soon as we both feel like it's a good thing for us to do, or we would love to do it. Harald, thank you so much for joining us, early in your morning over there, and then early in my morning over here. And I appreciate it, and I'll be in touch. And everyone, we'll talk to you again, and we'll see you very, very soon.
See you.
Can't make me lie to my heart. No one tells me where I should start. Free to bust is what I say. Nothing now gonna